I certainly don't. This is what I use. I use Swiffer refill boxes because they're nice and easy, because they've got a plastic lid, and they're perfect, because when you first plant your seeds, you're going to try and keep those seeds wet, the moisture in. So put the Swiffer pot. They don't last very long because obviously they haven't got the depth to do any root growth as such. Old pop bottles, cut them 2-litre pop bottle, stick some holes in the bottom of it, because you've got to have drainage, right? Stick some holes, cut it off about halfway up. Brilliant. Tins, if you use tin food. Milk cartons, cut them off again halfway, put some holes in, but clean them out properly, because otherwise you're going to get funguses. Fruit boxes, you know, the ones you get your strawberries in, they've got the holes in them, and they've got a lid. So you shut the lid till the things have started germinating, open up the lid, you're in business. Aluminium loaf pans. That was somebody else's idea. Aluminium, not terribly happy about it. Newspaper pots. You can just fold newspaper around itself and make newspaper pots. And in fact, somebody's come up with a little sort of wooden thing that you fold the newspaper around, and you can make newspaper pots. It's not expensive. Try not to use the ones with too much colour ink, though, the really glossy ones. It's better to try and get an old sort of...
You can just Google that and it'll come right up.
Yeah, yeah. Filling medium. So...
What's core?
Koya. That is made out of coconut. Now, if ever you buy an amaryllis in a box, have you ever had these amaryllises that you can buy in a box, and then you start it just before Christmas and it'll flower at Christmas time? It comes with a mix that it's already, it comes with its own mix, and you just put it in a pot and you grow it. Okay, so potting compost, start using, get a proper seed starter one. Don't get the ordinary potting compost, because that's for later, because that's got different feeding matters in it. Koya is made out of coconut. You can buy it by the bag, and it's just a totally inert material. So it's good because you can feed whatever you want to feed into it. It's actually something like this, but not in the sort of jiffy type situation. It looks like this as well, and it absorbs an immense amount of water. So that's good. And don't use manure, not at this stage. And don't ever use raw manure anywhere near any of your vegetables or things, because it will burn your plants. Raw manure, only use really well rotted manure if ever you're going to use manure of any sort. But we'll talk about that in another session. Sanitation. I can't stress enough that if you're using the Swiffer refill boxes or the milk cartons or the tins or whatever, please wash them out with hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is used by people like Bob Osborne at Cornhill. It's used by all the big nurseries. It is the one that kills funguses. Not chlorine bleach. Hydrogen peroxide will kill funguses. And that's going to be one of your main problems in growing. You're going to have what's called damping off, and it's a tiny little mycorrhiza, what is what they're called, and it's a fungus that grows in the potting soils. You can't help it. Even the professional potting soils have got it in them. And if it's just at the right temperature and the right moisture, you're going to have plants that suddenly go and they just say, that's it. And you'll find that the roots are fine, the top of the plant is fine, but somewhere near the soil, the stalk will have suddenly gone flop. And that is the sign of damping off, which is a fungal disease, and there's not much you can do about it, quite frankly. You can grab the ones that haven't yet, transplant them quickly out of that soil. It is said that if you take garlic and make an infusion of it by taking garlic and crushing it up and putting it in water, or you take chamomile tea and put 1 chamomile tea bag in a litre of water and let it steep for 24 hours, those are both antifungal products. And if you pour that on that soil, then when you're planting, then these things won't happen. This fungus won't grow. So, yeah, so it's a clove of garlic in half a litre of water, really, really crushed. and you leave it to steep for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then apply it before you plant, and the same with the chamomile. Right, so your seeds don't need a swimming pool. Here's my swimming pool, right? That, in there, your seeds would not germinate. That's too wet. There are two ways to kill your seedlings. One is too wet and the other is not wet enough. So, you need constant moisture, yes, to split seed cases and start rooting. But this is a wonderful little thing as well. Not only does it come pre-packed and everything else, when it dries out, it tells you so. It goes light brown. So when you see this go light brown, you know that you've got water again. Brilliant. These are brilliant for saving time.
Again, do you stick it in water again, or do you just spray it?
What I would do with these is I would put them in a fairly deep dish and then just bottom water, because the moment you start putting water on leaves, you're asking for trouble, especially under lights. Yeah, because then it burns. Because water is a prism. So you're getting light going through that prism onto a leaf that is not yet hardened off and ready to take it. It'll burn. So try and always water from the bottom if you can. Okay, stratifying and scarifying. These are two terms that we use in horticulture. Scarifying. You scare your seeds out of their skins. Okay, sweet peas. Coriander. They've got thick, tough shells. And it's quite often quite difficult for them for the poor little embryo that's inside that shell to burst out. So, piece of fairly rough sandpaper, just rub your seeds over it. Dill, coriander, sweet peas. Ordinary peas are not necessary, but anything with a really thick, it's mostly tree seedlings that I'm looking at, things like hickory. If you're trying to grow hickory, you're going to have to scarify it. So, just rub it over the sandpaper, pre-soak it, and then get it going. So that's good. Stratifying is making the seed believe that it's been through a winter so that it will germinate. Because most of us keep our seeds in temperatures that are actually a little bit too warm. It can take up to 2 months. Now, if you're going to try and grow lavender from seed, for instance, and I have never yet managed to grow lavender well from seed, I've managed to grow a few spindly plants. You're going to put them in a plastic bag, in a bit of soil, in your fridge for over 2 months to make them think that they've been through winter, and then they will start growing when you take them out of the fridge. So this is some of the trickier seeds. This is not vegetables. You don't really have to stratify any vegetables to get them going. Thank goodness. Because otherwise they'd never grow. So that's that. So it's always worth pre-soaking peas. Now, some people say pre-soak your peas for 24 hours. Use lukewarm water. I wouldn't go more than 4 hours. Pre-soak beans, especially your pole beans. But again, people say 8 to 10 hours, and I'm saying that's if they go into slightly cold ground, they'll rot. So soak them only 2 or 3 hours directly before you're going to put them in the ground. So when you're looking at these websites, look at the pre-soaking, take about half of the time off, and then you'll be okay. Because I've found that I've pre-soaked and I've ruined seed so many times by doing it by the actual. So we're going to sow some seeds. We're going to prepare. You've got your soil mixture, right? You've bought your bags, you've made your mix, or you've bought your seed starter. You need to moisten that. Don't make it absolutely dripping wet. We don't want the swimming pool. We want it moist. Okay, so when you take it in your hand, it's moist enough to form quite a reasonable ball, but that it falls apart easily. Don't make it wringing wet. You've got to find containers and workspace. I have to clear off my entire dining room table before I start work and put some plastic down. Where? Do you want to start your seeds in the dark, or do you want to start your seeds in the light? Now, there are certain flower seeds that should only be started in the dark. begonias, for one. However you want to try and grow begonias. Begonias, calendulas, they're about 5 or 6. There's
Violas or something.
yes, yeah. Start them in the dark, because otherwise they won't grow. And as you probably learned last week, you only ever plant your seeds 2 times their radius depth-wise. So if you've got a great big bean seed, like a pole bean, you're going to take that fairly deeply, okay? Because it's got to be 2 times its width, its radius. But your tiny little seeds, like your poppy seeds, if you're going to grow Iceland poppies or things like that, they just go straight on top. They don't even get covered up. Because in nature, if these things are going to fall on the ground, they're not going to get covered up. They're not going to get somebody coming along and actually covering them up. They're going to grow straight off the top of the ground. And that's, we're mimicking nature. That's what we're doing. All right, so you've got to find a spot where you can move your plants to once they've started germinating, which is warm enough. Don't forget the warmth. So no greater than 2 times the diameter of the seed, so therefore often on top of the soil. And you've got to put a cover on them so that they stay moist until they've germinated. Then you take the cover off, otherwise they'll damp off. And if you've got any way of doing base heat, so much the better. Furnace, any form of heater, except careful if you're doing it in plastic, you're not going to burn the plastic tubs into your stovetop or whatever, so be careful with that one. I actually ruined a soil heating cable doing that last year, so I've now got a mat, much easier. And after germination, all your babies are going to need, and they're going to need coddling. They're just like kids, and they're as helpless as babies, don't forget. They're going to need no extremes of temperature. You're going to try and keep your temperature fairly equal. They're going to need food. Now, if you can stand the smell of fish emulsion or kelp emulsion, that's the best food for seedlings. And use it at half the strength that is on the back of the package. So use fish or kelp emulsion, but use it at half the strength on the back of the package because it is too strong, basically. But it stinks. Be careful.
How often would you use it?
About every 2 weeks. It depends somewhat on what you're growing. If it's tomatoes, every 2 weeks or so. Yeah. But as you come to transplanting at the end of April, beginning of May, cut down on the fertilizer, cut down on the water. We'll get to this in a minute, because you're going to sort of harden them off, and you're going to say, right, you're now teenagers. You've got to stand on your own 50 roots. Space. Plants need space, just like humans need space. I came to Canada because I needed space. I couldn't stand living in England anymore. 66 million people in the size of New Brunswick. It was just too squashed. Same with plants. They want some space. So the moment that they have got 2 sets of leaves, which is the cotyledon leaf, which is the original leaf that they grow with, and then the second set of leaves, transplant them into a bigger plot so they've got space to grow better roots.
How deep down into the soil?
You just need to take them very, very slightly lower than they were actually growing previously. Yeah. But don't make too much of a sauce around them, because if it gets too wet, they'll damp off. Yeah. Humidity. Now, most of our houses in Canada are around about 40% humidity in winter. That's not good enough for plants, for seedlings. It's got to be at least 50 to 70 to even 80% humidity. So if you've got a spare room that you can make into a plant room, that's fine, but you've got to keep your humidity up. So I put a lot of bowls of water around all my seedlings.